Transforming numbness. Numbness. This is a good one for all of us. This is one I know quite a lot about myself. I was, I'm not going to tell you my story, but I was sent off to a boarding school when I was 7, and part of my heart shut down because of the harrowing nature of that. And, I spent many, many years just feeling numb in my life and in relationships and stuff. And part of that has accelerated my journey, catalyzed my journey to sort of do what I'm doing now. So one of the things I would say about numbness, obviously numbness is something that takes place here in the body, particularly across the chest, where we feel it. And sometimes it can feel like a wall, and I guess I'm here to say that it isn't a wall, actually. That actually numbness is an emotion. And you might think it isn't. You might think numbness is a lack of feeling and emotion. But I would suggest to you that actually it is an emotion. So feeling numbness is a way of going into that emotion and just giving it some space. And in my teachings, I share the art of contemplation, which is about gentling ourselves and giving ourselves space in our life so that we can feel what it is we're feeling, and we can go a bit more deeper into the feeling, and often that means going deeper into the discomfort, and that means sitting with it, or it means talking about it, or it means contemplating it and really feeling it in one's body. And so, often numbness isn't because you're insensitive or you can't feel. It's often the opposite. Often numbness comes because you feel too much underneath. It's too much. You are very, very sensitive, and that's why the numbness comes, to protect you. And it's a reflex that you will have developed early in your life, in your childhood, because of various things, whatever they were that happened. You don't even have to know. But what you do have to do is entertain it and feel it deeply and really go into it and have sympathy and for yourself, have compassion for yourself, for the little child in you, so that you can begin to soften that numbness again, and you can begin to open it, and you can begin to stroke yourself. And this is actually, by the way, a really lovely thing to do, is just to kind of take your hands and to stroke your chest like that and begin to soften the numbness. Like if you can imagine a young child and they're feeling numb and they're feeling contracted and locked away, that incredible gentleness and the way you touch them, that's how you help them to feel safe again. And it's the body that has to feel safe. And so that's what we have to kind of do. We have to gentle ourselves back to life, our heart, to gentle it back to life. So numbness isn't a wall. It's something that can melt. It's if it is a wall, it's made of ice. And ice can be melted, and it can be melted by softness and patience and our focused attention on it. Our focused, soft attention on it. What it does, numbness, is it obviously closes us off from many relationships with the world around us, from feeling connected to people, to things, to animals, to creatures. And sometimes a nice way to begin working away at numbness is to kind of work with nature. Sometimes the human connection is a bit too much in the beginning because it's just hard, for some of us. So we find a way of connecting with an animal or a pet or nature itself. I mean, there's a wonderful word. The word is viriditas. I think it's a Latin word. And it's not easy to translate. It means the energy and the life force of the color green, the greenness of creation. And green as a color, in color therapy, green is a powerful color for melting, particularly here across the heart. And so if you can find some green, and preferably it's alive, it's a tree or a field or nature or a meadow or a park, and especially if the light is on it, but it doesn't have to be. And you can go out and you can spend time among the green, the viriditas, and you can gaze at the green. It's an incredible thing to do, to gaze at the greenness. Just gaze at it and sit at it and be among it and be with the grasses and be in the meadows and just look at the green and look at it and let it wash over you and let it come through your cells. And what you'll feel is it begins to melt the numbness, because it's the frequency of the greenness of Gaia that has that effect in us. It begins to just soften us and it begins to wash through us. And over time, it will begin to melt and soften our heart. And our heart will learn to trust again. And that numbness will become a thing of the past. And it may come back at times. It may come back suddenly when you feel threatened or someone says something cruel to you. And suddenly, in that split second, having been open and vulnerable, you're suddenly, boom, the ice wall's there. And you feel numb. And that's okay. That's okay. That's going to happen. And then so we just go back and we work at it again and we melt it and we go out and we spend time with it. The thing to do is disengage at that point with the situation if you can, because if the wall has come up, if the ice wall is there, then you're no good to anyone in that state. I mean, you can say, I'm sorry that hurt, and I can't, I need to be with myself. Or if you trust someone deep enough, you can have them, you can talk with them and you can get support from them if that feels appropriate. But ultimately, we kind of have to soften this ourselves. We have to work into this area of our being, and it takes time. It takes years. It's taken me years. It wasn't until my 40s, really, where I began to feel my heart again on a more consistent basis. But I worked at it. I went on the path, and that doesn't mean, yours won't happen much more quickly. I was probably kind of backward and it just took me time. But in the end, it begins to soften and you get used to living once again with an open heart and you start to feel this merging again. And these vectors of intimacy, that come in when you open, as you open a little bit more, all these different vectors of intimacy that come towards you, these relationships with things, with people, with plants, with animals, with friends, and they kind of all cross through your heart and they move out of your heart and they begin to merge with you and you become friends again with life. You become what the Sufis call the friend. The friendship of life starts to flower in you, and the numbness starts to fall away and be a pattern of the past, a pattern you no longer have to entertain. So I'm evidence of this, that it works, with gentleness and patience, and spending time with nature, and connecting with these vectors of intimacy, and learning to trust again through our hearts. And then, you really are you're kind of, again, back to trust, back to this state of trust. And still, sometimes there might be moments where you feel the ice enclosing, but then you start to learn how to melt it over a period of time. And you come into harmony and resonance with what's called the Schumann resonance. This is the frequency of the earth, particularly when you do that thing where you're gazing at the green. You start to come into contact with the frequency of Gaia herself. It's an oscillation pattern. It's a magnetic wave pattern, a resonance. And when you let that come into you, it starts to just put your whole being at ease. And you begin to relax, and whatever it is you're holding, whatever it is that's tense, it starts to kind of melt, and you begin to flower in many different places in your life, and these vectors open up for you, and you come into this wonderful word I call florescence, which is kind of multiple flowering, You experience multiple flowering, like a tree with many, many flowers going off all at once, opening, budding. In lots of areas of your life, you start to flower. And because you become who you are, you become, life itself, viriditas, the green energy of the flowering source of all life, of love. So, a message for you to contemplate.